Hello folks, hope you are doing well. Today in this video, we will discuss how to automate asset governance using CI/CD pipelines. When implementing asset governance, FinOps team often face several challenges like lack of visibility into idle resources, cultural resistance to cloud cost optimization, decentralized cloud usage across teams, tool integration complexity, and dynamic cloud pricing models. While Harness doesn't control cloud pricing models, the other four challenges can be effectively addressed using the approach I'm going to share today. The solution follows a four-step process. Gain visibility into idle cloud resources using Harness CCM asset governance. Notify stakeholders like account owners, app teams, and cloud ops about the identified resources. Tag resources for optimization or deletion. And then delete unused resources after the approval. To implement this, we will use asset governance policies and enforcements to trigger Harness pipelines that handle notifications, approval, tagging, and deletions. For this demo, I am assuming you have Harness CCM set up in your environment and all necessary permissions like list and delete are provided to asset governance. We do not need any additional permissions for pipeline except adding the owners to Harness SaaS platform. We will use unattached EBS volumes for this demo, but similar pipelines can optimize any cloud resource. So let's dive in. In my AWS account, I have created an EBS volume that is unattached to any cloud compute service and lacks tag information. To automate the optimization of unattached EBS volumes, we will create 4 asset governance rules and use them in 2 pipelines. The first pipeline will be notification and tagging pipeline, and it will utilize the list and tagging policies. The second pipeline is an approval and deletion pipeline. It will trigger an approval process and delete the resource after the approval is done. For full automation, enforcement should be created to trigger pipelines using policies. However, in this demo, we will manually trigger the pipeline from asset governance. Our first CI pipeline consists of 2 stages. Approval request, which is generating and sending an approval message, and tagging execution, which tags the resource upon approval. If approval is not granted, the pipeline will not tag the resource for optimization. This step is crucial as FinOps teams in large enterprises often lack visibility and do not own these resources directly. The second pipeline follows the same structure, but instead of tagging, it deletes the EBS volumes upon approval. Now let's manually trigger the first pipeline from asset governance rules. The policy will use a webhook to initiate the process. Note, dry run will not work. You must click run once for the policy to execute successfully. So here we can see it has detected unattached EBS volumes in our environment. Let's see if the pipeline was triggered or not. The pipeline was successfully triggered and is now waiting for approval. An email notification has also been sent, ideally to the AWS account owner. So let us approve this request. And we can see that the tagging script is also executed. The volume is now marked for deletion. Next, we will run the delete policy, which will trigger the second pipeline to remove the tagged EBS volume. The pipeline is now awaiting approval, and we have received an email notification with the resource detail. Let's approve it. Once approved, the delete API call is triggered, and we can see we have received a 202 response indicating a successful execution. Now let's check the AWS console. After refreshing, we can see that the volume no longer exists. Details of this operation can be found in Evaluations tab, and the cost impact will be updated shortly. Now let's see how to implement the pipelines. I have created project files and uploaded them to a GitHub repository. Let's navigate to Harness Continuous Integration to create a new pipeline. We will give it a name and add a custom stage. Add a shell execution step to generate the approval body. We will use a predefined email template to structure the content. Next, we will export this as an email content variable to use in the approval step. Here's a quick explanation of the code. Asset governance passes the AWS account, region, and resource detail during execution. The code formats the data using HTML tags to generate the email body. If needed, you can customize the code to fit your requirements. Any future updates will also be reflected in the GitHub repository. Now we will add the approval step. And select the user group to send the approval to. And save it. Next, we need to add the custom variables like account ID, region, and resource to store values coming from Asset Governance webhook payload. Make sure the type is always set to string and the value is changed to runtime input. We need to run the pipeline to retrieve the output variable location for email content. After executing the pipeline, we must go to the Output tab of the step and copy the variable path. Once copied, we will update the approval message with this location and save the changes. Next, we need to create the trigger. We will assign a trigger name and proceed by skipping to the pipeline input section. In the values field, we will enter the required parameters. Once done, the trigger will be successfully created. Now we need to copy the webhook URL and move to Asset Governance for further configuration. We will create the first rule to list unattached EBS volumes and will provide the webhook URL. Next, we will create the tagging rule. This rule will only tag the unattached EBS volumes after approval. Once done, we need to copy the rule ID from here to make the API call. Now I will create the enforcement with this rule. The execution frequency is critical in this automation. The first pipeline can be scheduled to run daily, while the second pipeline can be scheduled weekly. However, this schedule should be adjusted based on your use case and environment. It is important to test these configurations in lower environment first before applying them in production. Proper validation ensures that only intended resources are optimized and removed, and nothing is accidentally deleted. Once we copy the rule ID, we will update the API call. And now we will move to the second stage to tag the EBS volume and will update the API call here. For the API call, you need to generate a token and specify the target account and region. In this case, I have hard-coded these values, which is not a best practice. So to improve this, I will update the code in the GitHub repository to use pipeline variables instead. This will allow the pipeline to dynamically handle multiple accounts and regions without requiring manual modifications. Let's run the pipeline and verify if the email notification is successfully received. Yes, we have received the email. Now, let's proceed to the second pipeline. The second pipeline follows the same design as the first, but instead of tagging, it will execute the delete operation. We will carefully follow the steps to set it up. First, we will run the pipeline to obtain the output variable path for the approval step. Once retrieved, we will save the changes. And then add the necessary variables. and finally create the trigger. I will copy the webhook URL for the asset governance rules and replace the existing URL with the new one. And next, I will create the delete rule. And copy the rule ID for the API call. It is important to note that the delete rule will only remove EBS volumes marked for deletion. This ensures that we only optimize designated resources, preventing accidental deletions. Let's add the last stage for deletion. Just make sure you are using proper variables. I will add the final stage for deletion, ensuring the correct variables are used. Now let's run the entire pipeline. Since I have already demonstrated the email notifications earlier, I will directly approve the request from the pipeline. So the first pipeline has successfully executed and the volume is now marked for deletion. Now let's start the second pipeline. The second pipeline has been triggered and is currently awaiting delete approval. Upon approval, we can see that the API call was successful and the EBS volume has been deleted. Next, if I check the evaluations tab, the cost impact may not be visible immediately. However, from a previous run, I can show you how the cost savings are displayed. So that's all folks. I hope you found this video helpful And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Harness Support. Thank you.